In the heart of Queens stands a stadium that was supposed to restore pride to an entire fan base, but instead of uniting the Mets faithful, it tore them apart. With elegant arches, retro charm, and a rotunda that feels more like a museum than a ballpark, Citi Field was built to honor baseball history. The problem? It honored the wrong history. No Mets legends, no franchise banners, just a shrine to the Brooklyn Dodgers, a team that left New York half a century earlier. And just as the shock set in, came the twist. The stadium was funded by taxpayers, yet named after a bank rescued by those very same taxpayers during the financial crisis. What was meant to be a homecoming became a scandal. This is the story of how the most controversial stadium in Major League Baseball was built. For generations of baseball fans, stadiums are more than buildings. They're temples of memory, pride, and identity. But by the early 2000s, the New York Mets were stuck playing in a stadium that felt like a forgotten chapter. That stadium was Shea. Shea Stadium had opened in 1964 as part of New York City's push to bring National League Baseball back after the Dodgers and Giants left for California. It was bold for its time, but by the 21st century, it had become one of the least loved ballparks in Major League Baseball. The concrete structure felt cold and outdated. The concourses were narrow, the seating angles were awkward, and there was little in the way of character or charm. It was a stadium that never truly felt like home. Meanwhile, across the league, teams were moving into new state-of-the-art ballparks that offered more than just a place to watch a game. They were designed to give fans a unique experience. The Mets, once one of baseball's most storied franchises, were in danger of being left in the past. A new stadium wasn't just a luxury, it was a necessity. Mets ownership, led by Fred Wilpon, saw an opportunity to create something special, a place that could compete with the best, rekindle a sense of pride, and finally give Queens a home field that matched the city's ambition. But instead of going ultra-modern, Wilpon turned to the past. A lifelong fan of the old Brooklyn Dodgers, he envisioned a ballpark that would pay homage to the team of his childhood and bring a sense of heritage to the Mets' future. That vision would become Citi Field. To bring it to life, the team hired Populous, one of the top sports architecture firms in the world. Formerly known as HOK Sport, the firm helped usher in a new wave of retro-style ballparks, starting with Camden Yards in Baltimore, which blended modern amenities with timeless classic design. For Citi Field, the blueprint would be inspired by Brooklyn's beloved Ebbets Field. Even before the first brick was laid, the design of Citi Field raised eyebrows. When renderings were released to the public, fans noticed something strange. The stadium didn't look like a home for the Mets. Instead, it looked like a love letter to the Brooklyn Dodgers. The arched brickwork, the black steel, the rotunda honoring Jackie Robinson, everything echoed Ebbets Field, a stadium tied to a different team from a different era in a different borough. Mets fans were quick to question why their new home seemed to be borrowing someone else's legacy. While critics debated the design, crews were already breaking ground. The vision, controversial or not, was becoming a reality. Construction of Citi Field officially began on November 13, 2006, and by 2008, the project was moving quickly. Right next to the aging Shea Stadium, a new ballpark was rising, built with steel, brick, and a heavy dose of symbolism. For a time, old and new stood side by side, one being slowly torn down, the other steadily taking its place. The site buzzed with activity. Workers drilled foundation piles 110 feet into the ground, roughly the height of a 10-story building, to form a solid base, while tower cranes hoisted massive steel beams into position. The exterior, with its red brickwork and sweeping arches, was inspired by Brooklyn's Ebbets Field, tying the stadium's appearance to baseball's past even as it looked toward the future. One of the stadium's signature features, the Jackie Robinson Rotunda, was also coming together at 160 feet wide and 70 feet tall. It was designed to serve as both a grand entrance and a powerful tribute. Inside, builders installed 8-foot-tall sculptures, large value panels reflecting Robinson's legacy, and a floor inscribed with powerful words. Just beyond the outfield, crews assembled the Shea Bridge, a symbolic walkway that links sections of the concourse and serves as a subtle nod to the Mets' former home. As the exterior moved toward completion, engineers turned their focus to the stadium's structure and fan experience. The seating decks were designed using massive cantilevered steel trusses, which allowed for clear sight lines with no obstructed views. Every piece of infrastructure, HVAC, electrical, and plumbing, was designed to support a modern stadium experience from comfort to concessions. By December 2008, workers were finishing the final touches. 41,800 seats had been installed, compared to Shea's over 55,000, but the new configuration offered more legroom and better views from every angle. The playing field was covered in Kentucky bluegrass, chosen for its durability and playability in New York's unpredictable weather. Even details like bullpen placement were reconsidered. Originally positioned perpendicular to the field, the bullpens had to be rotated 90 degrees during the offseason to give pitchers a better view. A small fix, but one that showed the team's willingness to adapt. Inside, luxury and convenience took center stage. The Delta Sky 360 Club, located behind home plate, stretched over 22,000 square feet, nearly half the size of a football field, and included seating for 1,600 guests. It featured private elevators, air conditioning, and upscale dining. Elsewhere in the stadium, the Citi Auditorium and dozens of premium suites were being finalized, designed not just for baseball, but for press events, meetings, and corporate entertainment. One of the most iconic features was the Home Run Apple, a nod to Mets history. It was rebuilt to be 4 times larger than the version at Shea, rising to over 16 feet tall, roughly the height of a standard 2-story house, and popped up from center field in perfect timing after every home run, now powered by modern hydraulics. In terms of technology, Citi Field was built with future upgrades in mind. Conduits and support systems were installed in 2008 that would later support one of the biggest additions to the stadium, the largest scoreboard in Major League Baseball. Though it wasn't unveiled until 2023, the foundation was laid early. When completed, the scoreboard measured 17,400 square feet on the front, almost the size of 4 basketball courts, and 6,900 square feet on the back. Controlled by a full IP-based system, it allowed for instant replays, interactive graphics, and real-time stats across the entire venue. In addition to the main scoreboard, ribbon boards wrapped around the stadium's interior, and upgraded audio systems delivered high-quality sound from every corner. Whether sitting in the upper deck or grabbing food near center field, fans were fully immersed in the action. Field dimensions were another strategic design choice. With 330 feet to right field, 335 to left, and 408 to center, Citi Field was considered pitcher-friendly. But after player and fan feedback, changes were made. In 2012, the outfield wall in left center, nicknamed the Great Wall of Flushing, was lowered from 16 feet to 8 feet. A few years later, the right field wall was moved in by 8 feet. These adjustments made the park more balanced and more exciting for hitters. By the end of 2008, construction was complete. On March 29, 2009, the stadium hosted its first event, a college baseball game between St. John's and Georgetown. 2 weeks later, on April 13th, the Mets played their first regular season home game at Citi Field. But while the field looked pristine and the fans poured in, not everyone was cheering. As the final invoices rolled in and the naming rights lit up in bright blue letters, a much bigger question started gaining attention. Who really paid for this stadium? When Citi Field opened its gates, Mets fans poured in with excitement, ready to see their team's new home. But what they found wasn't what they expected. The seats were fresh, the air smelled of new concrete and popcorn, and the sightlines were incredible. But something was off. There were no Mets championship banners, no Tom Seaver statue, no mural of iconic plays or beloved players. Instead, the heart of the stadium, the Grand Rotunda, was a shrine to Jackie Robinson and the Brooklyn Dodgers. The brick facade, the ironwork, the arches, everything echoed Ebbets Field. It was beautiful, yes, but to many fans, it wasn't theirs. The outrage came quickly. On sports radio and in newspaper columns, fans began to vent their frustration. They questioned where the Mets' history was and why the stadium felt like it belonged to a team that had left New York half a century earlier. Eventually, even team owner Fred Wilpon couldn't ignore the backlash. He acknowledged that the stadium's design leaned too heavily on Brooklyn Dodgers nostalgia and admitted it had been a mistake. In response, the Mets organization began making changes. They renamed entrances after franchise legends like Tom Seaver and Gil Hodges, added team banners and murals, and finally introduced a long-overdue Mets Hall of Fame. Little by little, Citi Field started to feel less like a tribute to a different team and more like the true home of the Mets. But that wasn't the only controversy surrounding Citi Field. There was also a financial deal that left many New Yorkers fuming. The stadium had been partially built using public funds, municipal bonds, tax exemptions, and infrastructure support. To be more precise, $615 million out of a $900 million total cost came from taxpayers. That's nearly $1 billion of public money in today's terms. And in the middle of the 2008 financial crisis, just as construction was peaking, Citigroup, the same bank whose name now lit up the stadium, received a massive federal bailout. To many observers, the situation looked like a double blow. A stadium funded by taxpayers, named after a bank that had been rescued by those same taxpayers' dollars. Editorials described it as corporate welfare. Economists questioned whether the public would ever see a meaningful return on investment. And countless fans, dealing with job losses and economic hardship, were left wondering why their money had helped finance luxury suites and VIP lounges. In the years since, Citi Field has matured. It's become one of the most comfortable and fan-friendly stadiums in baseball. But beneath the bright lights and video boards, its legacy is still complicated. A place built to honor the past, yet unable to escape the controversies of the present. And with new development plans already stirring fresh debate, Citi Field's most defining chapter may still be ahead. Ready to be amazed by the next groundbreaking construction project? Click on the video now and dive into a world where engineering and imagination collide. See you there.